So, friends, I welcome you all again. And now we have our, expert speaker of the occasion, Prabha Shankar sir, already with us. And Prabha Shankar sir is now a name, who needs no introduction because you already have seen his charisma in the past lecture. So, without wasting any time in introduction, because I have already taken his 20 minutes, I would straight away hand over the, platform to sir to deliver his talk. And I would like to request the participants that dear friends, the topic which he has taken up for discussion today, which we have requested him to deliver upon now, is very important. Why it is important? Because ultimately all our efforts towards teaching, they'll be successful only when we are in a position to assess our students effectively. So evaluation and testing becomes one of the most important component of teaching, and this is the area in which today sir is going to share his knowledge, understanding and experience with us. This is the area in which he is going to talk today. So over to you, sir, please. Thank you, and sorry for taking your time, sir. So you're not audible, sir. Unmute yourself, please.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay, thank you
Yeah.
very much, ma'am. Thank you for inviting me again to deliver a talk to discuss things with all the participants. A very good afternoon to all the participants, my friends and colleagues. So without wasting any more time, I'm going to start the presentation. Uh, is my screen visible to you now? Ma'am, is my screen visible?
It is visible, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we are going to discuss. I heard that this is the last discussion, last interaction of the workshop. So we are going to uh, finish the workshop with evaluation and testing, which actually can be considered as the take home of the workshop. So finally, what happens when we talk about evaluation and testing, certainly these things have some goals in teaching and learning. This evaluation or assessment or testing, these things are not only for students or not only for teachers, it is for both. We have certain aims. When we teach, we have to assess that also, whether what we are trying to convey, what we are trying to tell our students are reaching to our students or not. The basic thing in communication itself is communication is a two-way process. So when we say something, until and unless we receive a feedback on that, and until and unless the intended message is conveyed, communication does not take place. That is failure of communication due to some barrier it may happen. So similarly, what happens, evaluation and testing, these things are some tools. Like testing basically is a tool that informs us about our achievement in the sense, when we try to convey something, when we are trying to teach something, we test our students to see whether they could understand that or not, or to what extent they could understand. So let me begin with my presentation. I would begin with Albert Einstein's quote, where he says, "Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts." So here it is very interesting. Actually, Einstein says that, see, assessment, evaluation, testing, these things matter a lot. These things count, but they cannot be counted. So we should not think that only those things which can be counted count. But he also says not everything that can be counted counts. There are many other things that can be counted, but they don't count. So we have to keep in mind that assessments and evaluations are more than, red pens, happy faces when someone scores very good, marks, happy faces we see, gold stars and grades. Evaluation and assessment, these things are beyond uh, just a few things which are uh, cited here. So it is important for teachers to consider carefully why, how, when, and what we assess or evaluate, because at some point very early in formal schooling, the impact of assessment and evaluation affects the learner. So from very beginning, see, many of us, I don't know about the backgrounds of the participants. Some of you might be from some schools also, I don't know. But all the teachers, all the teachers teach with a certain goal. And it is our duty to find out whether we are able to attain, or we are able to uh, attain that objective or aim or not, what we are intending to. So the given quote by Albert Einstein is one that challenges teachers to really consider what we assess or evaluate. So here we have to be very careful in assessing, because what happens sometimes, you see, because of the mistakes of we all encounter different events in our lives. We listen to very bad speakers, we listen to moderate speakers, we listen to good speakers. We in our classes we have seen very good teachers, some average teachers, some teachers whom we don't consider to be a good teacher. So we have scope to learn a lot from all of them. Someone whom you consider not good, you learn from his manner and qualities that they consider for themselves, that if you avoid these things you can be better. And when we were in school, the misconception was that in universities and colleges, lecturers come, they deliver lectures, they don't care whether you understand anything or not, they will go back. But I don't think this is the case with universities and colleges and institutes. Teachers care a lot what they teach. They try to always assess whether they could succeed or not in teaching that, because success is not of the student, it is the success of the teacher who teaches. So sometimes we try to keep ourselves away from students learning. When students are not performing well, we think that it is because of some problems with students or that particular student. So in some cases it is true, some students don't have interest in that particular area, therefore they are not performing well. So we can avoid some exceptions. Barring some exceptions, we have to be vigilant about our performance, because you see, if we look at the current scenario in Indian education, Indian higher education particularly, we can see the government is focusing a lot on changing the way education is being imparted. We are following many of the new techniques, new ways, which are already in use in many of the countries in the West, like American system of this assessment and continuous assessment. You all must be finding in your colleges and universities that continuous assessment is taking place these days. So two midterms or two quizzes, two tests before end term examination, at least two are prescribed, like all the teachers have take to uh, midterm examinations. In between, some quizzes will be there, some assignments, and then interim examination. Continuously the student is under pressure. But the motto of assessment or evaluation is not to exert pressure on students continuously. Instead, the objective of assessment is to learn, to understand to what extent the student is able to learn. A kind of feedback we get from the students in the case of assessment about their learning, to what extent they could learn. And that assessment is used for improvement of the student. Like if we get some feedback, if we get some impression from the assessment that here I need to improve because my students are of a different level, they do not have sufficient grounding in this area, so first I should provide them sufficient information in this particular area, and then only I can go ahead. So for these things we have several established norms or rules by the researchers in the field of education. So we are going to discuss all these things in this session. Let us look at the terms testing, evaluation, and assessment. First, let us have some brief idea about, and then we will discuss these things in detail. So testing is a tool for measuring the skill, knowledge, intelligence, capacities, or aptitudes of an individual or group. Merriam-Webster dictionary defines testing like this. So it is considered to be a tool. Testing is a tool. A test necessarily quantifies characteristics of individuals. Quantifies, like you see what happens after tests we grade. So quantification is like your ability or your skills are quantified. You are given some grade, you are given some marks, and it is like your skill, your learning is understood in terms of those numbers, that you have understood this topic to this extent. So testing is used as a tool. Evaluation is defined as the systematic gathering of information to make decisions. So evaluation uses testing or measurement as a tool, and after gathering information through these tools, evaluation involves value judgment, decision making. It makes some decision where we say that student improved. So how can we say that student has improved? Only on the basis of information gathered, information not of one particular period, but uh, you see, we can gather information of, like in first month when we introduced the course, what was the status or what was the uh, condition situation of the student, and then in the second month the student improved or could not improve, in the third month what happened. So we gather information in evaluation, and then we make decision. So that part is the part of evaluation. Assessment, the gathering of information concerning the functioning of an individual or an organization and the use of that information for improvement. So assessment basically has a goal. Here information is gathered, and after gathering the information, we try to achieve that goal, attain that goal of making the student learn more, improvement of the student. Let's focus on evaluation and testing in detail. So we know that education is concerned with preparing citizens for a productive and meaningful life. So evaluation is something that is very much present in all walks of life. So evaluation basically should be a way of providing credible feedback on the extent to which we have been successful in imparting such an education. Education tries, the basic aim of education is to make, citizens a meaningful person, productive, citizen of the country. So we use evaluation, testing, assessment as a kind of tool where we see to what extent we succeeded in achieving our goal. The term evaluation is often used interchangeably with the term measurement. So not only with the term measurement, sometimes evaluation is used interchangeably with assessment also. But these three terms are distinct from each other substantially. We will discuss that. But it is more comprehensive and involves the placing of an overall value judgment or learning. Evaluation is more comprehensive than measurement. Measurement is part of evaluation. It is not synonymous with evaluation. Testing is only a technique. So when we talk about measurement and testing, so testing is always considered as a technique or tool to collect evidence regarding pupil behavior, student behavior. Measurement, on the other hand, is limited to quantitative description of the pupil behavior. So this marking or grading is more concerned with measurement, the other step of evaluation. Evaluation is a more comprehensive term which includes testing and measurement and also qualitative description of the pupil behavior. So quantitative description is measurement, qualitative description can be understood as assessment. It also includes value judgment regarding the worth or desirability of the behavior measured or assessed. Therefore, a scholar, a researcher, Gronlund, has indicated this relationship in the following equation. He says evaluation is equal to quantitative description of pupils, that is measurement. Measurement is quantitative description plus value judgment. Decision, we make decision on the basis of the information gathered. Also, evaluation is qualitative description of pupils, that is non-measurement, because quantitative description can be measured, qualitative cannot be. So non-measurement, which can be seen as synonymous with assessment, qualitative is assessment plus value judgment. So we can see that assessment and measurement, testing, all these are somewhere associated with evaluation, which is an umbrella term in a way. Let us understand this case study to understand these three terms in a more detailed manner. Rohini is a student of class 10th in a government school in the state of Madhya Pradesh. She has received her progress report of the half-yearly examination. After going through Rohini's progress report, other students of her class congratulated her. Her half-yearly progress report reveals that she had scored 91 in mathematics, 72 in science, 68 in social science, 64 in Hindi, 55 in English, and stood first in her class. It was also written in her half-yearly progress report that she has improved significantly in comparison to her performance in the earlier examinations. Receiving appreciation, Rohini became more and more motivated and was inspired to do better in the final examination. Now you see, the information relating to achievement of Rohini helps us to understand the concept of measurement, assessment, and evaluation. Let us examine the following diagram to understand what these concepts are. So you see evaluation. Evaluation involves both measurement, that is quantitative description, and assessment, that is qualitative description. Along with these two, it has value judgment. Value judgment is that decision. So concept of measurement we can understand, because according to the diagram, if we look at the diagram, measurement is the quantitative description of one's performance. When we go through the case of Rohini, we find that she scored 91 in mathematics, 72 in science. Let me go back. 72 in science, 68 in social science, 64 in Hindi, 55 in English, and stood first in her class. So leave this part, stood first. Only let us look at the numbers. This information represents quantitative description of Rohini's performance in half-yearly test. So here we can conclude by saying that measurement always represents the qualitative value, like certain score, number, or any quantity, because it is quantitative in nature. It is a process of assigning numerals to objects or an attribute according to certain rules. It is used in physical sciences when we measure or weigh something. So here what happens in education, in the field of education, humanities and social sciences, what happens? We measure the attributes of human beings. What are the attributes of human beings? Achievement, intelligence, attitude, or any personal or social quality. So in physical sciences, measurement of an object is done in absolute term, while in education or social sciences, measurement is an attribute which is done in relative term. Now, we might have understood that achievement or scores of Rohini obtained in the half yearly examination is an example of measurement, because numerals are assigned. Now, the other part, if we look at, that is assessment. So assessment basically, certain questions we can ask to understand assessment. What do we mean by assessment? And how could the school management or teacher, whosoever announced the result, particularly school management, because mark sheet is prepared by them. So how could the school management decide that Rohini stood first? To come to this decision, what happens? They have to compare Rohini's performance with other students' performance. So this comparative study is qualitative study. So assessment basically is qualitative description. After analyzing Rohini's performance, understanding it comparatively, the school management could decide that Rohini stood first because she performed better than others on the basis of the data or quantitative description gathered, right? Because to understand the qualitative description also to some extent depends on quantitative description. Now let's look at this concept of evaluation. So in case of Rohini, we find that she has improved significantly in half yearly examination in comparison to her performance in the earlier examinations. What does it mean? It was written here that she has performed better in comparison. She has improved significantly in comparison to her performance in the earlier examinations. So how the management reaches this conclusion, this decision? So we can conclude that this type of judgment carries certain value and add to the performance of Rohini to make it more meaningful. It motivates the candidate. While forming the judgment like improved significantly, the earlier performance of Rohini in the previous examinations has been taken into account, considering considering her performance by the teachers. When we add value to the assessment of student performance, we carry out evaluation of their performance. We can define evaluation as a process of collecting information on the basis of which comparison of two or more sets of information is carried out, and judgments about attainment level in terms of intended learning outcomes are formed, which in turn are used for making decisions. So the decisions are generally made pertaining to improvement of teaching, grading, promotion, certification, etc. So, having understood the measurement, assessment, or evaluation, let us look at this activity, and please answer these 4 questions. Please read this with me. Miss Preeti is a secondary school teacher. She conducted a unit test in all the sections of class 9th in her school. It was a 20 marks objective type test. She collected and assessed all the answer scripts. She compiled the scores class wise and also made some groups like above average, average, and below average. She returned the answer scripts with remarks like your performance is average, below average, above average. She also identified some topics where a large number of learners were not responded well or made mistakes. She decided to provide additional activities for those topics in order to facilitate learners. Based on our passage, marked in front of following statement whether it was measurement or assessment. So the first question is, Preeti assigned 1 mark for correct answer and 0 for the wrong one. It is measurement or assessment? Manas, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
Hello.
ma'am,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
you have asked me to, have some activities.
Yes,
So
sir.
activities need, involvement of participants also.
Very, very
And
true. Very true, sir.
yeah,
Yes, sir.
so I expect some participant to answer these things.
Participants, and respond using chat box, or you may mute yourself and respond. Sir is not in a position to see chat box, so it would be better they are answering, sir. In chat box they are writing.
Is it?
So yes, sir, but chat box is not visible to you. Please
Yes,
unmute yourself and answer, because chat box is not visible to sir.
not visible to me.
Yeah, they are all answering, sir, but it is written in the chat box.
Yeah, ma'am, I
Yeah.
can understand, but I
Yeah.
cannot see that.
So please unmute yourself and answer, participants.
Friends, please say something.
Yes,
Preeti
sir.
assigned 1 mark for correct answer and 0 for the wrong one.
Yes,
So what do
yes,
you
we
think?
are
This
with
is,
you, sir. Yeah. Just give us some time. Yeah.
so this is measurement or assessment?
Assessment, sir.
Assessment, we can say, sir.
Why assessment, sir or ma'am?
Because the wrongness or the correctness of the answer is checked.
We discussed, ma'am, that measurement is quantitative description.
Yeah, sir.
So,
Yes. Because it is the marks and quantity, it should
yes,
be
so
measurement. Yeah.
quantitative description,
Yes,
number
sir.
is
Yes.
being awarded.
Yes,
So
sir. Yes.
it should be measurement.
Okay.
Preeti calculated total score of each learner. So, sir, it is measurement or assessment? What do you think? Again, score is there. So score
Some
again
measurement.
refers to
Some
quantity. So
Measurement.
measurement. So Preeti categorized learners' performance as below average, average, and above average. Now quantity is not there. She's talking
Assessment.
about
This is
quality.
assessment.
So it is assessment.
the
Yes.
assessment.
Thank you,
Assessment
ma'am. Thank you very much. Preeti identified the topics or areas where learners have not performed well. Again, this is assessment. So
Yes.
where quantity is not involved, where quality is there, where we are talking about quality, that is assessment. Let us
Yes.
talk about the role of assessment, how it helps us, we teachers. Assessment is very useful. Actually, what happens because of the system, you
मास्टर
might
एग्जाम
not have heard.
नहीं फिर उसके बाद
Yeah, please mute yourself if you are not responding to any question. So, assessment in India itself, in IITs and in other CFTIs, as centrally funded institutions, government had proposed tenure track system. Tenure track system is a system which is very much prevalent in the US, where this assessment, continuous assessment of the teacher who is taken on contract, who is not yet tenured, will take place for 5 years. It was proposed, but government did not implement it. It is very much in practice in the US. So a lot of practices we are trying to follow or borrow from the US, which are good if we can improve in terms of performance. So assessment is for any student. We can see, like when we were student, to get admission we are assessed. Once we are taken in some class, when we go to our class, teacher teaches and assesses us. Assessment is very much continuous process. After passing the examination, we are assessed for job. When we are in job, even then we are assessed. Assessment takes place continuously. But assessment should be very much unbiased and focused on excellence, improvement. It should not be used as a tool for demotivating the person or candidate who is being assessed. The wrong practice is assessment is used for demotivating people. You are not learning, you are not good in learning things, you can never learn, you are good for nothing. All these comments we pass, and similar comments we also get from other people who assess us sometimes, if they are motivated with some ill intentions. So educational researchers like Angelo and Cross, Davis, Murray, Reynolds, Schulman, these people, these researchers found that effective teachers share several characteristics. To be an effective teacher, we have to follow certain criteria. So if we are following certain criteria, all those people who follow those criteria, which help students, in learning, which are outcome based, those people are considered more effective than others whose performance or who is not able to serve the purpose for which he or she is teaching. But two of them stand out. So there are many characteristics which are shared by the effective teachers, but two of these characteristics stand out. What are those two characteristics? Through frequent assessment and feedback, effective teachers regularly assess what they do in the classroom and whether their students are really learning. Assessment should be focused on getting a kind of feedback. Assessment is not always for the student to award grades, quantifying things and putting on the head of the student that you are not performing well. I'll write a letter to your parents, I'll do this, I'll do that. Lot of things we do, but we never worry about ourselves, while it is more important for us to evolve, to grow. And how can we grow? We can grow only through feedbacks. Therefore, uh, see both kinds of feedback, positive and negative. We know about Kabir Das, no, who has said, "Nindak niyere rakhiye angan kuti chhabaye, bin pani sabun bina nirmal kare subhaye." So one who criticizes us helps us a lot in improving, but depends on us how we take the criticism. If we take the criticism, see, criticism should also be constructive. Yesterday when we were talking about this review, so review is something which should be done by a person who is not biased, because a biased person can give destructive comments, which can destroy a lot of things in your personality if you start considering those things. Criticism should always be constructive, unbiased. If things are good, you should try to retain that. And if you get some feedback from your reviewer may be your student, maybe your colleague, maybe your mentor, maybe your senior. So if you receive some feedback from these people, constructive feedback, you should consider those things to improve. So through frequent assessment and feedback, effective teachers regularly assess what they do in the classroom and whether their students are really learning or not. They try to anticipate the topics and concepts that will be difficult for their students. Yes, another very, very important aspect of teaching is, and we all do it, when we go to deal with some difficult topics, we anticipate the difficulty that may be encountered by the students. So will be difficult for their students, and to develop teaching strategies. When we have understood that in a very plain manner, if I deliver this particular topic, it may not be understood by my students, I'll try to devise some way, some other method, some strategy to make that easier and more graspable for my student, that present these topics in ways their students will best understand. These teachers make a special point of becoming familiar with their students' preparation, knowledge and abilities, and adjust their teaching to maximize the class learning. It is always important, even in public speaking, even in writing, in teaching, wheresoever we go. It is very important on our part, one who is writer or speaker, it is important for him or her to understand the level of your audience, your reader, or your student. If you understand their level, their level of understanding, you can be more effective undoubtedly, because you will go to that level and you will try to make the student understand in a better way. Determining what students know. So what we were talking, the same thing is being discussed here. Learning is cumulative process. So what happens when we deliver, when we are teaching a course, that course, in the most of the cases, some other course relating to that might have been taught to students. Sometimes we assume that students must be knowing to this extent, and we start beyond a point which we expect them to know, but actually they don't know. The reason may be the teacher who taught that course might not be available for teaching due to some reasons. Students could not do that in that course. Anything can be a reason. So the better thing is to try to know to what extent your student knows about the topic. So The thing is, when we prepare a kind of syllabus in our system, like in IITs, what happens? We propose a course. In courses that we propose, there is a column prerequisite. If you feel that you are going to teach this course and there is a prerequisite for this course, one who comes to this course should know at least this much. You can write there that prerequisite is this. Only those people can come to this course who have already understood these things. One of the ways of understanding what your students know. If student lies, again, in your class, you have to assess whether students understand what you are expecting them to understand or not. So you can ask some questions relating to that in the class. Quick questions. A quick understanding will help you to be more effective, because if they don't have any background about that topic, or they have some misconceptions and you are not clearing those doubts, misconceptions, what will happen? They will, whatever you deliver, it is written, if the student's preparation is spotty or incomplete, a research has been done by Pintrick, American Psychological Association. So he says, if the student's preparation is spotty or incomplete, they may find it harder to grasp the new material. If the new material conflicts with earlier misconceptions, what you are delivering is true, and you are delivering, something, thinking that your student knows about the background, but he has some misconceptions about certain topics which are related to the topic you are delivering, or firmly held assumptions he has, the students unfortunately may ignore or distort the new information that you are delivering. He will distort, or he will adjust in some manner, so that it fits into their old framework. Such students adjust things. They try to distort the information so that it fits into their old framework of understanding. So you have to be careful. Otherwise, later on, what happens? You must have observed sometimes some student, not all, some student, tells you that, sir, you only told me this. He writes some wrong answer and he says, you told me this. He blames you, blames us, only because he has, distorted the fact that we presented, because he was having some doubt or misconception which were not cleared, and he adjusted our information with that. So it is important to be careful. Now, how to assess the students? Some suggestions. At the beginning of every course, we should try to gauge the students' prior knowledge of the subject. So what are the prerequisites? As I suggested, you have to ask, you have to know. There are several ways to identify that students already know. One of the simplest is to introduce a topic and then ask a question. A topic that is not in that course, a topic that is related to that course, and you expect your student to know that topic. So in the beginning of your course, you just start discussion on that. So, like you see, you are going to discuss direct, indirect. There are special rules for each kind of sentence. So beforehand, you should test whether your students know types of sentence or not. If they don't know, they cannot understand the special rules of narration. So we should start a kind of discussion on that. And if we we could understand, assess that our students are like they have understood things thoroughly, they have thorough knowledge of that, we can go ahead. A more comprehensive way to learn about students' prior knowledge is to give brief diagnostic pre-test, ungraded and anonymous. Yes, another way is to give pre-test, which is known as diagnostic test. In our this in our institute, we do it for students who are admitted in first year, because we encountered a problem. Remedial English course was like, ministry was asking all IITs to give remedial English, which is there in university also. So remedial English, there we have made voluntary. Those who want remedial English can come. Here it was compulsory, but there were many students who were really good in English. They did not want English to be forced on them. So what were we doing? We were taking a diagnostic test, pre-test. On the basis of that, we try to decide that who need help. So when you evaluate them, assess them, you can easily understand that who need help in this particular area. You just pick them up to help. So during the term, frequent diagnostic mini quizzes can help identify which students are keeping up and which need help. So along with tests, some quizzes are advised. Quizzes can be of 2 marks, 3 marks, 5 marks. A course will be of 100 marks. So very small quizzes can be, uh, there. And these quizzes, you should not inform the students. Without any prior notice, in one of the classes, you can say, today is the quiz. Now, you can assess whether your students were learning or not. So now, this assessment should not be to punish the students, but to be more careful. So when we go to our class, we should try to, begin with the gist of the previous class. We can correlate the previous class with the class that is to begin. In a way, what will happen? A kind of revision will take place. So we have to determine that, our students learn what we are intending to teach them. Are students learning what we are teaching? So individual students do not make uniform progress. We cannot expect all students to make uniform progress. Sometimes a student reaches, a plateau after a burst of learning. We should try to sample how well our students are learning. Typically, when we want to assess students' learning, we tend first to think of giving tests or quizzes. So these are some of the ways of assessing the students. But there are alternative ways also. Alternative to standard quiz or tests. There are informal ways of assessing them. Some suggestions are like, ask questions during the class. It will help you to make your class interactive also. If you keep on asking questions, see, asking questions triggers the mind of the students to be attentive. When you are going to introduce a topic, you know that you haven't taught that to the students, but try to gauge if they have some prior information, anything relevant they can say on that topic. Just pose a question, because you are going to say that I'm going to teach this topic. So in place of that, we can say that, do you know this? In place of saying, do you have any question, we can ask, what question do you have? So we have to be in a mode that our students ask questions, more questions they should ask. Give frequent short in-class assignments or quizzes. Pose a question or problem on an overhead or the board. Give students time to respond in writing particularly, and have students compare answers with their neighbors. If you are, assessing your students in all the classes, you cannot evaluate their performance every time. Your motto should be to make them improve. Whatever method you can adopt, it would be justified if they are improving. So ask them to match their answers with neighbors. All will be having neighbors. Some answer you can, announce that this answer is correct. And if subjective question is there, some explanation you will be giving. They can match, they can improve. Ask students to write a minute paper just before the end of a class. Another very interesting and very effective way of assessing whether your students are learning what you are teaching or not. So just before the end of a class or session, ask, what is the most significant thing you learned today? Just 5 minutes before the class ends, when you have finished your lecture, you just ask them to write, what is the most significant thing you learned today? They will think. They have to write something that they learned something from that class. Or you can ask a question, what question is uppermost in your mind at the end of today's class? To ask a question, one has to have something, some background. So if a student who is physically present in the class but mentally wandering cannot ask a question. So if he knows that in the end of the class, he has to write a question, he has to uh, tell you that what he learned from your class, he has to be attentive. And if in the case of question, he comes with some ready-made question, at least one who is not interested, he is, preparing to give you some question, something he is learning. So we can see that, something works if we try assessing your course. It is a common practice to wait until the end of the term to ask students how successful the course has been. This is the common pro forma of student feedback. In all the universities, colleges, what happens? What do? We ask the students to give feedback in the end of the semester. Just before the end semester examination, they are asked to give feedback. But you see to what extent it helps. The motto, the objective of assessment or feedback is to improve. Who will improve? The teacher should improve. Because when students give feedback, they say that, teacher was not focusing on this area. I was having problem in this particular aspect of the course. All these problems they give. And after the end semester is over, the teacher takes a break for 3-4 months in our system, and those things are not, and unfortunately in some universities you will find only that score will be revealed to the teacher that you could not perform well, you performed well, but comments that students are supposed to write, the unfortunate part is also that students don't write comments. But if at all some students are writing comments, those comments are not disclosed to the teachers. Only scores are given to them. Again, measurement, assessment is not taking place. Qualitative description is not given. Always quantitative description. That is less effective in comparison to qualitative one. An alternative approach is to request informal constructive criticism throughout the term. We can seek feedback from the students when classroom presentations, organization, pacing and workload can be adjusted. So if we get some feedback, if we are assessed, assessment is very continuous process. In each class our students assess us as we assess them. Similarly, they also assess us. When they go out of the class, they pass some judgment for sure that today's class was amazing, today's class was very average, today's, if it is average every day you have been teaching in a similar manner, they don't care. But if it was amazing, they pass some judgment, they comment on it. If it was really bad, they comment on that also. So make sure that the feedback comes to you. If you are really careful about the feedback from your students, usually your classes are going to be amazing, because you are performance, always conscious about your performance. So when you are conscious about your performance, you will prepare well. Instructors can gather information about the effectiveness of their teaching strategies. So when we get feedback, what happens? We try to improve. We try to change these strategies, like we follow some strategy in teaching. If some students are talking about this strategy, they are complaining about this strategy, that particular strategy is not helping them, we can change that if we get feedback during the semester, and it will help us to achieve the goal. Soliciting students opinions about your course, so we discussed this. Some teachers feel awkward, but this is the reality and we must accept it, because our assessment, basic real assessment, takes place by the students. They can assess us in a better manner than many experts can assess, because sometimes you will find an average scholar is a very good teacher, and great scholars sometimes do not prove to be very good teachers. They know a lot, but like a book, they are not able to deliver well. So delivery is something that is slightly different. We know what to deliver, what to present, but sometimes people don't know how to present. Lot of matter we have, but you see, when food, talk about food in five-star hotels, when we go, the same food, the same salad is served in a very fascinating manner, and you are charged a handsome amount for that salad. At home, it is just cut and given to you. It's not costly. Presentation matters a lot, because it grabs the attention. So when your audience is interested in listening to you because of your method of presentation, because of your strategy, you are largely going to serve the purpose. How well are we teaching? How can we ourselves assess how well are we teaching? Sometimes we think we have very positive opinions about ourselves, but we don't know what mistakes we commit. So this time, again, this time of pandemic is giving an opportunity to many of us, all of us, I should say. The whole world is suffering, and all are teaching online, so classes can easily be recorded. Let us follow the methodology of recording the class, that is videotaping. Videotaping is a bit different. It is for classroom teaching, where your body language, even your body language and the expressions of students can be recorded. But here also, to some extent, you can assess in what manner you deliver. Sometimes when you listen to your own lecture, you will feel that you committed some grave mistakes in the sense, you did not sound very convincing. You did not convey things in very convincing manner. So we should listen to our lectures also. Videotaping helps in classroom teaching, in assessing your classroom teaching, where you can see the reactions of your students. You can see uh, your body language, your presentation, the way you are delivering, the way you are answering the questions, the way you are starting a topic, or transitioning in between some other topic you are starting. So how the transition is taking place. Lot of things are there to assess, which you can easily understand, assess using this method of videotaping. How well are we teaching? Again, videotaping We should, find the answers to these questions in videotaping. These questions are really important. What are the specific things I did well? To retain good things, you have to know that specifically where I was good. It motivates you also. Then what are the specific things I could have done better? Where do you see the scope for improvement? What kept the students engaged? Sometimes we see that students are very much engaged. They are attentively listening to us, but sometimes they are just sleeping. They find the lecture very boring, and we also realize that when our lecture goes boring, we realize that very much. When did students get lost or lose interest? That point, and we should try to analyze it. Why students were losing the interest in the lecture? If I could do this session ever again, what three things I would change? How would I go about making those changes? So you can assess all these things, analyze these things, and improve. How well are we teaching? Peer evaluation. The other method of evaluating our teaching is peer evaluation. Peer review, we all are acquainted with. Whatever we write, it is reviewed by our colleagues across the world. It goes to some expert. If I'm writing a paper in English, it goes to some English expert in the US, the UK, or in some other country where I submit, to that journal. That journal can send my paper to some Indian expert also, but it will go to our colleagues only. Therefore, it is called peer review. And we get comments, we get suggestions on that. Similarly, particularly the US has started it. This peer review, now in India, also we can find this peer review of teaching. This assessment takes place, peer review, your colleagues will assess to what extent you are successful in teaching. Particularly it was existing in US, it was prevailing in US to give this tenure thing. When someone completes 5 years of tenure track period, when they are to be tenured, then different levels of assessment takes place. One of them was peer review of teaching, peer evaluation of teaching. So peer evaluation of teaching can be an effective method for the improvement also. We certainly have our friends in our departments, our colleagues. In most of the cases we find good friends in our colleagues. We can ask our colleagues, our friends, to to evaluate our classes, to find out the gaps, the problems in their perspective, and to tell you the positive aspects of your class, a kind of criticism similar to peer review. So it again helps a lot in improving our performance in teaching. Let's look at this another activity. Ma'am, Vandana ma'am, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
If
Yes,
any
sir.
student is present, can you ask someone to read? Because
Hina?
continuously I'm speaking.
Yes, yes, sir. Actually,
I
yes,
had
sir.
another class. So,
Yeah, yes, sir. Sure, sir.
yeah, please ask someone.
Please read, Hina.
Mrs. Ramana wanted all her students to meet her learning outcome. She announced to her fourth grade students that if their reports on the electricity investigation was accepted, they would receive an A, and if it was not accepted, they would receive it back for the revisions. After revision, If it was accepted, then they would also receive an A. Now, as you might expect, some children asked what would happen if they still needed further revisions. Mrs. Ramana replied that they could redo it until it was accepted. At that time, they would receive an A because they had met the standards. She said, because I wasn't lowering the score for each retry, I worried there would be complaints that I wasn't being fair, but I had none. Another concern for Mrs. Ramana was time. She knew it would take more time to assess multiple submissions, but decided to do it anyway. She created the rubric and went over it with the students. The rubric focused on students demonstrating their knowledge of electrical flow of series and parallel circuits by means of drawing and writing.
Yeah.
She waited.
Yes. Please continue.
Shall I continue, sir? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Please, ma'am.
She waited for the completed projects and found that 11 of the 18 children achieved the standards. Not great, but at least there were only 7 to reassess. When the students' work was returned, and she said, I was delighted to see children working and talking with others about ways to make it correct. Mind you, they were not copying. They were talking about what was weak or incorrect and discussing how it should be. Only 2 children made revisions a third time. Though it did take more time, there were fewer revisions because only the parts that needed improvements were examined. All students succeeded and were actively focused on learning. At her team meeting, she shared what she had done and asked, give me some feedback. What do all of you think about using this strategy?
Now, you see, the question posed here is, what are the trade-offs of assessing in this manner for students? See, she is saying that you will get grade A anytime you submit your answer, corrected answer. So she is not, fixing some timeline or saying that only once if you have submitted the, you know, uh, answer and it is not up to the mark, you won't get grade A. She was giving grade A to all those people who were ready to improve and who were ready to submit the improved answer, correct answer. What are the trade-offs for teachers? Would you like to be a learner in Mrs. Ramna's classroom? Explain. So I ask the participants to opine on this. I request participants to say something on this, to answer this question. Okay. So, yes, is someone going to respond?
Oh,
Okay, so we can see here that emphasis of Mrs. Ramna was shifted from assessment of learning. What do we do usually when we award grades? The assessment is of learning, how much the student has learned. But Mrs. Ramna's approach shows that she shifted her emphasis from assessment of learning to assessment for learning. The basic, objective of assessment is to make the students improve. So what Mrs. Ramana did, she allowed the students to improve. Those who could submit the answer in first attempt, correct answer, they got grade A. But she also gave grade A to those who made efforts to give the correct answer. So finally what happened, all the students tried well and gave the correct answer and they secured grade A. So here the assessment of learning was not there, assessment for learning was there. So the basic objective goal of assessment, that is the improvement, was achieved. So outcome, let us consider our own experiences. Were our assignments focused on assessment of learning or assessment for learning? Usually we focus on assessment of learning, not for learning. Some students just copy, they submit, and we feel frustrated, we punish them by awarding 0 or 2 out of 30, 40, whatever it is. So we hope the assignments were or will be more in line with assessment for learning. So this activity tells us, instills some positivity in our mind, that we should be patient enough to allow our students to improve, and assignments should be the assessment for learning in place of assessment of learning, because in that way only we can achieve the goal. Testing and grading, another part of this session. In addition to the informal assessments, more formal assessments of student progress provide important gauges of student learning. At most institutions, testing students and assigning them grades provide the basis for such evaluations. Grading practice in a course can both motivate students and define the goals of a course. So testing has become a kind of convention everywhere. And what do? We test our students in a very detached manner, without paying attention to the fact that our grading may influence students' decision to select a field as a major career, because of some insensitive, irresponsible teacher. Some very good students, or that field loses some very good student. So we should ensure that we must not be that irresponsible or insensitive teacher who causes this loss to the field which is providing us our daily bread. Students who measure their learning by the grade they receive tend to invest time only in aspects of course that clearly affect their grade. Giving too much uh, importance to grade is like some, and we can see these days what is happening. Lot of tests are there, both are frustrated teachers and students. Sometimes teachers hint the students such questions will be there in your exams. Students will come prepared, they will learn only 5, they will prepare only 5 answers, they know the questions, they come, they do well, secure good marks, the course is over, they get mark sheets, certificates, and finally when they are in the field and when they are actually being assessed for the jobs, they fail at every step. When they fail, with them we also fail. Only students do not fail. With students, that students teacher, those students teachers also fail. So we should ensure that we should not fail by making our students a failure. The why and how of tests. Ideally, tests measure students' achievement of the educational goals for the course, and the test items sample the content and skills that are most important for students to learn. Some goals and methods of testing adopted from Fahrman and Grasha are to measure knowledge. The goals, so to measure knowledge, recall of common terms, facts, principles, and procedures. Ask students to define, describe, identify, list, outline, or select. So these are some methods which help us to achieve the goal of testing: to measure application, solving problems, applying concepts and principles to new situations, ask students to demonstrate, modify, prepare, solve or use, to measure analysis. So uh, these are some methods which help us to achieve the goals. If we look at the kinds of tests, conventional kind of test we know about, which takes place in all the colleges and universities, there are some less conventional tests, less conventional in the context of our country. Take home tests, these tests are very much there in practice, because we give assignments to our students with certain deadlines and certain uh, precautionary notes. They go back home and we give some deadlines, we give them time to prepare the answers. We tell them that we will check the plagiarism of your answer. Plagiarism test will take place, so they try to be honest. Some of them try to be honest and they write things in their own way, and some of them devise their own way to avoid you know to be caught by the software, plagiarism software. So they have, some students have their own methods of avoiding the workload. Another test which is less prevalent in India is open book tests. Open book tests are not very much in practice, particularly in universities where we have very much conventional kind of tests, universities and colleges. I too, when I was in Sagar University, I was not aware of this practice, but in IIT I could see many of the teachers practice this open book test. Students are allowed to keep their books with them during the examination. They are allowed to consult the book. So see, preparing such questions needs a lot of effort on the part of teacher. You have to prepare, frame a question which student has to write on his or her own. He or she cannot find the answer in the book. Some hints may be available, but if they try to open the book, they have to waste a lot of time in finding the references. Sometimes it turns to be very negative approach for some students, because they waste the whole time in searching for the answer and they do not get, because the teacher knows that answer won't be there. You can get some hints, but you have to write the answer on your own. So it is an effective test method, where when student is informed that open book test will take place in this course, he or she will be, all the students will be very much focused in your class. They know that what you are delivering would be of more importance, greater importance, because books won't be of use to that extent. So testing students throughout the term, this is in practice, this is called continuous assessment. Throughout the term, students are tested using different kinds of tests, as we discussed: midterms, quizzes, assignments, etc. We keep on giving them. But see, if we are too much mechanized in doing it, then it is useless. If we are able to trigger the minds of the students using these methods, like some maximum 2 midterm examinations you are fixing between the end term examination, and students know that they have to be very attentive in the class to perform better, and continuously in your class, as we discussed in the previous slides, you are continuously assessing them and trying to understand that whatever you are trying to teach they are able to understand, then they will perform well. After a test, most students are anxious to see how they have done. We should be, prompt enough in showing them the corrected answer scripts, because it helps them improve. So the basic focus, the focus should not be on awarding grades, instead showing the problems. But what happens, it is easier for the teachers to award grades. Sometimes I have seen, in some in the case of some college, some answer script had come for re-evaluation, where marks were written on the first page of the answer script, and the answer script was not opened at all. It's very easy to write 5, 6, 10, whatever comes to our mind, we write that. It is very easy. But this system which we call in university, where universities are asked, in IITs it has been there for very long, all the teachers are required to show the answer scripts to the students after each midterm or end-term examination, and each student is free to ask for explanation why that student got that mark or where is the problem. But the difference I observed, students focus more on the problem. What is the problem? Where did I commit mistakes? How can I improve? So approach, you have to make it clear. You have to be objective also there. When you are awarding marks, you should not have ceiling. If someone has performed well, can get 100. If someone has performed really bad, can score 0 also. So if we are assessing objectively, student will also be very attentive. Ways to encourage improvement. So if you want to reward improvement, one way is to give students bonus points at the end of the term to acknowledge steady improvement throughout the semester. So when you have some flexible system where you can divide marks of your examination, you just keep some marks for steady improvement. So if you observe that is steady improvement in the performance of a student, that should be acknowledged by some bonus point. Or other faculty members allow students to correct their exams and resubmit. So there are other methods also. So I'm going to finish now. This is just a kind of conclusion. So role of assessment in the teaching learning process. The 5 questions which are fundamental in a teaching learning process for teachers to take cognizance of. These are 5 questions. Why or for what purpose should I teach a particular subject or unit of teaching? So objective. We should care for objective. We should take cognizance of objectives of the course. What have I to teach in that subject or unit of teaching? To take cognizance of content of teaching or learning. How best can I teach or can students learn the subject or teaching unit? To take cognizance of teaching learning strategies, methods of teaching. How best have I taught it, or how best have the students learned? To take cognizance of assessment of student performance. And in what way can I improve my instruction or students learning? So that is feedback. We can see the same here, expressed through a diagram. Objectives, content, methods, evaluation, and feedback. In the end, this activity, last activity, with this activity, I'll just announce the end of this session. So can anybody read or?
Sir, may I read?
Yes, please.
Miss Lata was a first-year 5th grade teacher and a science enthusiast. The next topic in her curriculum was on characteristics of invertebrates. Rather than teach, Rather than teach directly from the text, she decided to explore invertebrates in the children's neighborhood, and she was very excited to begin. She planned various activities with insects, arachnids, and worms, activities that included collecting and examining samples of grasshoppers, beetles, spiders, praying mantis, bees, hummingbirds, moths, cabbage butterflies, and sulfur butterflies. She discussed safely, including handling animals with care and washing hands well after handling them. The children also created a worm habitat while observing and reporting on the behaviors of worm and changes they saw in the compost habitat. The children keep journals with drawings generated questions. How does a worm poop?
Yes.
How do you know? How
Yeah,
do you
please
know
read.
which, how do you know which end is which? What are the rings? How do grasshoppers lay eggs? What do the eggs look like? What is polyphemus? How are cocoons and chrysalises different? Participated in grand discussions, read the textbooks, and conducted research to learn about the various invertebrates they collected. After 2 weeks, Miss Lata gave the children a multiple choice test taken from their fifth grade textbook. Throughout the explorations, Miss Lata was excited about all that she observed taking place with her students. They were engaged and learning. She just knew her students would do well on the test. After she scored the test, she was hurt sick. About two-thirds of the class made very low scores on the test, and the highest scores were no more than average. She wondered where she had gone wrong and couldn't understand the discrepancy of what she had seen them do in the classroom with what they did on the test. So, at the next team planning meeting, Miss Lata shared her story with her mentor, who listened and then asked her what she thought went awry.
Yes. Now, based on this story, this question, what do you think might accounts for Miss Lata's students' poor test scores? As a member of Miss Lata's team, what feedback and suggestions would you to offer Miss Lata to alleviate or prevent this problem from happening again? Yes, you can tell me.
As far as I'm concerned, sir, I would
Yes,
ask
ma'am.
my teacher, Ms. Lata, to conduct the test immediately after the observations.
Okay, ma'am.
Because this can give me little time to make the observations, that is, to correct my observations.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. Thanks for your response. Yeah, anybody else would like to respond? What went awry in the case of, you know, Lata's activity and her examination? So the thing is, when we recall Miss Lata's story, on the one hand, she implemented student-centered inquiry strategies. She was very, forward thinking in asking the students to do some activities. But the method of assessment was very much traditional. She used multiple choice assessment that was not tailored to her inquiry strategies and possibly not aligned to her learning objectives, which are not identified in the narrative.
मैं अपने को देख के बताती हूँ ऑप्शन
Science and inquiry, by its nature, prompts the teacher to
और कोई
explore alternatives. So it's not, advised to be very forward thinking in giving activities to the students. It is really important for us to understand that sometimes we should avoid conventional method of evaluation also. There too we can be innovative. This was the problem of Ms. Lata's, method of evaluation or testing. So now the session is open for questions. Thank you very much for patiently listening to me.
Thank you so much, sir. Now the session is open for question and answers. If you have any question, kindly put it in the chat box.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Nidhi ma'am has written. Thank you, sir. So all the participants, I really thank you.
Okay, sir, I think it was such a wonderful session that nobody have any questions to ask you. So,
Thank you, ma'am.
sir, I, Hina Chauhan, guest faculty from Department of English and other European languages. So, on the behalf of our department and Dr. Hari Singh Gaur University, I would like to thank you for such a great and insightful session. We learned so much today that how assessment should be for students and not just to test their knowledge and what they have learned, and how we can actually teach them while assessing them. I think it was very different way to see how assessment can work for teachers. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thanks to all the participants for listening to me very patiently. Thanks for your cooperation. Thank you very much. So should I log out, ma'am, now?
Yes, sir. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, I have an announcement to make for all the participants that the final examination form will be sent to you by 2:30 and the deadline for examination is 5 p.m. No further extension will be given for that. So kindly fill the form of final examination by 5. And I request you all to please be present at the valedictory function at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Hello, excuse me, ma'am.
Yes,
Hello.
sir. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, after this, we have to connect at 4 o'clock or 2:30 something.
No, sir. You
Hello,
have
ma'am.
sir. You have to connect at 4 for the valedictory function. The final examination form will be sent to
Before
you.
that, we have to write final examination.
Yes, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, if there is any confusion, the examination is to be taken